In this fourth and final video on managing the multi-business firm, we'll focus on restructuring, which occurs when one or more of the divisions within the firm or one or more of the business units is either performing below expected levels or for future strategic objectives, changes need to be made to the business the firm operates in. Recalling from the definition of corporate strategy, we required that the sum of the firms or the firms operating together, the value of that joint operation should be greater than the firms operating independently. Typically, when restructuring is needed, this is not occurring, or the synergies that are expected to create this sum of the parts is greater than the individual parts. That is not being captured. One of the typical reasons is that the firm may have over-diversified. We can see here diversification and value creation tends to follow this inverted U shape. When we get to this optimal diversification level, any further expansion destroys value and will thus require restructuring. Anything to the left of this optimal diversification level suggests that there is additional value to be created through restructuring by adding more divisions. Now, what's important to note here is this curve shifts based on changes in the economy and the economic environment from the Pestel forces we discussed under industry analysis. So while a firm may be operating at the optimal diversification level today, macroeconomic changes or changes in the macro environment may shift this curve to the left or to the right, requiring adjustments and restructuring. It is optimal for firms to proactively restructure rather than let the market do it for them. And one of the best ways is through a process pictured here. Again, this pentagon was designed by the McKinsey consulting firm, but other similar things do exist. We first start on point number 1 here, the current market value of the firm. This is simply the number of shares times the stock price. We then look at point number 2. What is the intrinsic value of the firm? In other words, the market does not have all the information about the firm's prospects. The firm has internal information that is not available to the market, so the firm calculates what is called its intrinsic value. In other words, the difference between what the market sees as its value and what the firm knows or believes to be its value based on its future cash flows. We then go to number 3 and think about, well, if we make internal improvements through restructuring, so we improve our operations, we maybe change the way coordination or our activities are coordinated, and maybe improve the operating performance of the various divisions, that gets us to point number 3, the potential value of the firm through internal operating improvements and internal strategic changes as needed. Moving from 3 to 4, we look at this is where the portfolio planning comes into play, and we think about what businesses we might want to divest from and what businesses we might want to acquire. And these are really thinking about external improvements. So these are adding new businesses or selling off pieces of the business to get us to point 4, which is the potential value of the firm with external improvements. We then, when we add up the difference between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4, we come up to point 5, which is the total company opportunities or the optimal restructured value. What this is basically saying is if we restructure the firm, we go through all the changes internally by improving operations and externally through new acquisitions and divestitures, we come up with what the firm could look like. And this represents point number 5 here. And this is the restructured value. And what firms are looking at is comparing on a regular basis, comparing point number 1 with point number 5. In other words, currently we are valued at point number 1. If we restructure the firm based on the changes we see needed, and we end up at point 5. If the gap between point 1 and point 5 is very large, it's saying we really need to restructure the firm now, or we are leaving the opportunity for raiders or activist investors to do it for us by buying us up and splitting us into various pieces. So firms will typically go through some sort of exercise like this where they look at their current value and then they look at their value as if they were broken up into pieces through all these various improvements. And if that gap becomes very large, they know they must restructure. However, if that gap stays small between number 1 and number 5, the firm does not need to be restructured because it is creating those synergies and creating that value that is expected from its corporate strategy. Most good firms go through this exercise, whether it's an internal exercise or by hiring external consultants, on a fairly regular basis every couple of years to make sure that they are involved in the right businesses as a multi-business firm and to make sure that those businesses are being managed efficiently.